In Chapter 19, we'll cover the reproductive system. The male and female reproductive systems consist of a series of glands and tubes. The function is to produce and nurture sex cells, and to make sure these sex cells are transported to the site of fertilization. Sex cells is another way of describing sperm found in male and the oocytes or eggs in a female. The reproductive system secrete hormones. The hormones help to develop and maintain secondary sex characteristics and help to regulate reproductive functions. Let's start with the structures of the male reproductive system. The male sex organs transport sperm to the eggs. The primary sex organ, also referred to as the gonad, or the testes, which produce sperm and hormones. There are also accessory sex organs that have a supportive function. The testes or gonad are an ovoid structure. They are suspended by a spermatocord. The testes are located in the scrotum. The testes consist of about 250 subdivisions known as lobules. The lobules are separated by connective tissue and holds the seminiferous tubules. This is the area where sperm is produced. The seminiferous tubules give rise to the sperm cells. The sperm are then carried to the epididymis, where they mature and can be stored, followed by the vas deferens, also known as the ductus deferens. There are interstitial cells, the cells that lie between the seminiferous tubules, that produce testosterone. Testosterone regulates the rate of sperm production. There are also Sertoli, known as cystinicular cells. These help to nourish and maintain the developing sperm. The term spermatogenesis means the production of sperm cells. Spermatogenesis begins at puberty. In the male embryo, spermatogenic cells develop, and these cells are undifferentiated and referred to as spermatogonia. The spermatogonia contain 46 chromosomes. Let's look at the human life cycle. Our body cells all contain 2 of each chromosomal pair. This number is referred to as the diploid number. Our diploid number is 46. When sperm and egg cells are formed, the chromosome number is reduced. Human sex cells are haploid, or 1N, and have 23 chromosomes. It's important that this reduction in chromosomes occurred, otherwise our chromosomal number would double every generation. Meiosis is the name of the process that's involved in sperm production as well as egg production. It's a type of reduction division. The primary spermatocytes undergo 2 sets of cell division. The outcome is that 4 spermatids are formed that have 23 chromosomes each. The spermatids mature into a sperm cell. If you look at the slide toward the bottom, it shows the spermatogonium. The spermatogonium are genetically identical to other cells found in the body. They replicate via mitosis. This is the same type of process that's involved in cellular growth, repair, and replacement. Some of these spermatogonium then differentiate and undergo the 2 stages of meiosis. All the chromosomes replicate, and the cell divides and divides again, resulting in 4 spermatids that each have 1 of each chromosomal pair. This is very important because the oocyte or egg is also going to have 1 of each chromosomal pair. And when fertilization occurs, the resulting cell will have 46 chromosomes. Let's look at the structure of a sperm cell. The head contains the haploid nucleus. Haploid's the term to describe that there's only 23 chromosomes present, 1 of each chromosomal pair. The midpiece contains the mitochondria. The mitochondria is an organelle that functions in providing energy. The tail has a flagellum. A flagellum is a cellular extension that can move in a whip-like movement. There's acrosomes at the tip of the head containing digestive enzymes. These digestive enzymes erode the tissue surrounding the egg, also known as an oocyte. The accessory organs of the male reproductive tract include the epididymis, the ductus deferens, also known as the vas deferens, the ejaculatory ducts, urethra, seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and bulbourethral glands. The epididymis is a tightly coiled tube. It lies adjacent to the testes. It leads from the testis to the vas deferens. The epididymis is where sperm mature. The vas deferens is a muscular tube about 45 centimeters in length. It leads from the epididymis up into the body cavity. It unites with the duct of the seminal vesicles to form the ejaculatory duct. The vas deferens then empties into the urethra. The seminal vesicles are a sac-like structure. They're attached to the vas deferens near the base of the urinary bladder. The seminal vesicles secrete an alkaline fluid. This fluid contains fructose to nourish the sperm, as well as prostaglandins. Prostaglandins cause muscular contractions in the female reproductive tract to help propel the sperm to the location of the egg cell, also known as the oocyte. The prostate gland is a chestnut-shaped structure. It surrounds the urethra at the base of the urinary bladder. It secretes a thin, milky fluid. This fluid enhances the mobility of the sperm and also provides nutrition. The bulbourethral glands are smaller structures located inferior to the prostate gland. The bulbourethral glands secrete mucus. This mucus lubricates the tip of the penis during sexual arousal. Semen consists of a combination of the sperm cells, about 120 million per milliliter, and the secretions released by the seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and bulbourethral glands. Now we'll look at the male external reproductive organs, the scrotum, the testes, and the penis. The scrotum is a pouch of skin and subcutaneous tissue that houses the testes. The scrotum has a medial septum that divides it into right and left chamber. The function of the scrotum is to house the testes and decrease the temperature about 3 degrees C. Sperm production does not occur optimally at normal body temperature. The penis is a cylindrical organ that consists of specialized erectile tissue. It conveys both urine and semen to the outside. The corpus spongiosum enlarges at its distal end to form the glans penis. The penis is covered by a loose fold of skin called the foreskin or prepus. During sexual arousal, nerve impulses trigger increased blood flow, which produces an erection. As blood flows into the penis, it fills in spongy spaces. This pushes on veins, and blood is unable to exit. Orgasm is a culmination of sexual stimulation and consists of two processes. Emission is a movement of sperm cells and accessory gland secretions into the urethra. Ejaculation forces the semen to the outside. After ejaculation, nerve impulses constrict the arteries in the penis, allowing it to return to its flaccid state. The hypothalamus, anterior pituitary gland, and testes are involved in the control of male reproduction and development of secondary sex characteristics. At the time of puberty, the hypothalamus controls the many changes that lead to the development of a reproductively functioning adult. Puberty is triggered by the release of gonadotropin-releasing hormone, GnRH, by the hypothalamus. This hormone then triggers the production of gonadotropin luteinizing hormone, also known as LH, and follicle stimulating hormone, also known as FSH. LH promotes the development of the interstitial cells. Remember, the interstitial cells are the cells that are found between the seminiferous tubules, and they secrete testosterone. Testosterone regulates the rate of sperm cell production. FSH stimulates the supporting cells found in the seminiferous cells. These are the cells that help to nurse the developing sperm. FSH and testosterone together help to stimulate spermatogenesis. Testosterone is the most abundant male sex hormone. It's secreted in a fetus until birth and then is not secreted again until puberty. Testosterone stimulates the development of the male reproductive organs, the dissension of the testes, and then at puberty, it stimulates the secondary sexual characteristics. These include deepening of the voice, production of body hair, lengthening and straightening of bones, and an increase in muscle mass. Now we'll look at the organs of the female reproductive system. These organs produce the female sex hormones, produce and maintain the eggs, also known as oocytes, transport the oocytes to site of fertilization, provide a favorable environment for the developing fetus until its birth. The gonads of the female reproductive system are the ovaries. The female reproductive system also includes external and internal accessory organs. The ovaries are solid ovoid structures. They're located in the lateral pelvic cavity. The ovaries are subdivided into a middle, medulla, and outer cortex region. The medulla contains connective tissue, blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves. It's the cortex that contains the ovarian follicles. The follicles are the support structure that surround the oocytes. Early in embryonic development, the primary oocytes begin to undergo the process of meiosis. This process then halts and resumes again at puberty. At puberty, there are about 400,000 oocytes present. Only about 400 to 500 will be released through ovulation. This is very different than the male reproductive system. In the male reproductive system, the spermatogonium are present at birth, and at puberty, these cells undergo mitosis, which some of them following through with the process of meiosis, form the spermatids. So you can see in the female, this process begins even before birth. Beginning at puberty, these arrested oocytes are stimulated to continue meiosis. But what's really different here between oogenesis and spermatogenesis is that in spermatogenesis, remember, we ended up with 4 haploid spermatids. Haploid meaning that they contain 23 chromosomes each. In oogenesis, you end up with 1 large haploid secondary oocyte, and the other cells are known as polar bodies. The polar bodies disintegrate. And the reasoning for this is the sperm are very tiny so that they can be motile and travel to the site of fertilization. Until the fertilized egg travels to the uterus, it has to have its own source of nutrients. So it makes sense to have one very large egg which contains a lot of nutrients and to have the other, quote, eggs, polar bodies disintegrate. And we really don't have time to get kind of bogged down in all the mechanics that occur, so just remember, in oogenesis you end up with 1 secondary oocyte that has 23 chromosomes, and the remaining cells form polar bodies which break down or degenerate. This slide shows the secondary oocyte. The structures that are surrounding it are referred to as the follicle. These act as the support structures. Each month, some of the arrested oocytes and follicles start to mature, and then one follicle and oocyte becomes the dominant follicle. At puberty, follicle-stimulating hormone initiates follicle maturation. The follicle starts to enlarge, the follicular cells proliferate or divide, and a fluid-filled cavity starts to form. This slide is showing how follicle starts to increase in tissue layers until ovulation. You can see the release of the secondary oocyte, and the remaining cells form a temporary endocrine structure known as the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes hormones that maintain the lining of the uterus in the event a pregnancy does occur. If pregnancy does not occur, the corpus luteum breaks down and forms a structure known as the corpus albicans. Again, without going into all the different mechanics of meiosis, you can just see that you have the oocyte and it kind of develops in parallel with that of its support structures known as the follicle. Ovulation is the release of the secondary oocyte from the surface of the ovary. The oocyte is surrounded by the follicle. The follicle then acts as a temporary endocrine structure releasing progesterone. Both the follicle and the oocyte will break down or disintegrate if fertilization does not occur. Let's look at the female internal accessory organs. These include the uterine tubes, the uterus, and vagina. The uterine tubes transport the oocyte toward the uterus. The structure consists of an expanded fundal end called the infundibulum, which contains fimbriae. Fimbriae are long, finger-like projections that are ciliated. This helps to sweep the oocyte from the surface of the ovary into the uterine tube. The uterus consists of several regions. The superior rounded portion is known as the fundus. The large central portion of the uterus is known as the body. The inferior portion is called the cervix, and this extends into the vagina. The uterus consists of several different regions. The endometrium is the inner glandular region. The myometrium is the muscular portion. The perimetrium is the serous membrane on the fundus and posterior body. The vagina is a fibromuscular tube that extends from the uterus to the outside of the body. The opening is partially covered by a membrane called the hymen. The female external reproductive structures consist of the vulva, which contains the labia majora, labia minor, clitoris, and vestibular glands. During sexual arousal, the clitoris becomes engorged with blood. The vestibular glands secrete mucus. During orgasm, muscles of the perineum, uterine wall, and uterine tubes contract rhythmically. The hypothalamus, anterior pituitary gland, and ovaries control female reproduction and the development of secondary sexual characteristics. At about 10 years of age, the hypothalamus begins to secrete gonadotropin releasing hormone. Gonadotropin releasing hormone stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to produce luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the ovaries to produce estrogen. Estrogen is responsible for female secondary sex characteristics. These include breast development, increased adipose tissue deposition, and increased vascularization of the skin. It also thickens the uterine lining. The ovaries also secrete progesterone and estrogen. These help to trigger the uterine changes that occur during the menstrual cycle. Luteinizing hormone stimulates the follicle cells to secrete estrogen. A surge of luteinizing hormone mid-cycle triggers ovulation. Menarche is defined as the first menstrual period. These are monthly changes that occur in the uterine lining. Menstrual flow occurs as the endometrium is shed. A menstrual cycle is started by follicle-stimulating hormone, which stimulates the maturation of a follicle in the ovary. As we mentioned, when ovulation occurs due to a surge of luteinizing hormone, the follicle cells form a structure known as the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes progesterone and estrogen. If no pregnancy occurs, the corpus luteum disintegrates. Estrogen levels drop, and this triggers menstruation as the meatrial lining disintegrates. This slide goes into a little more detail than we need to, but if you just look along, you can follow the hormonal changes that occur and see how this affects the developing follicle, ovulation, the corpus luteum, breakdown structure known as a corpus albicans, and you can also see how that aligns with the thickening of the uterine lining. Menopause is the age where reproductive cycles cease. As the ovaries age, there are no longer follicles available to mature, and this also results in an estrogen level decline. The mammary glands are accessory organs of the female reproductive system. These are specialized glands that are able to produce and secrete milk after pregnancy. The nipple is located at the tip of the mammary gland. The areola is the name of the pigmented skin. This slide compares spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Remember that spermatogenesis begins at puberty and then continues throughout the rest of the lifespan of the male. There are millions of sperm cells that are produced each day. Oogenesis actually starts prior to birth. The oocytes and follicles are then arrested, and this process continues again at puberty. Instead of millions of sperm cells produced daily, the female produces one large secondary oocyte monthly. Oogenesis ends anywhere between 45 and 55 years of age. This slide gives a summary of the different hormones that we've discussed, found in the male and female reproductive system. Let's look at our Greek and Latin word parts. Genesis, meaning origin, beginning, creation. Hystero, uterus. Salpingo, uterine tube. Oophore, ovary. Ectomy, surgical removal. Formation of sperm cells. Spermatogenesis. Formation of egg cells. Oogenesis. Break down the following term. Hysterosalpingo-oophorectomy. I like this one. It's the largest term we cover in this class. Surgical removal of the uterus, uterine tubes, and ovaries. Want an even longer term? And I can only say this one really slow. Pneumo, ultramicroscopic, silico, volcano, coniosis, which means lung disease caused by silica dust. That completes the male-female reproductive system.